Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, the new edition. You'll notice that we're changing things. We had a countdown clock today. That was a new thing. If you watched the beginning of it, we were doing mic checks and went live and had a countdown clock. It's the little things in life that we work on to try to make things a little bit better here. And I need to hand off. I'm sitting here talking through this, and the one part we didn't get handled is me handing off the edit here. So and I am okay. Someone's gonna have to wave at me. Who's editing here? I am not. Oh, there we go, Taylor. Okay, I hand this off to you. So anyway, so we're continuing our tests. You'll see the tests kind of rolling through. But basically what we're doing is we're working on kind of a redesign of how this all works. So we're going to answer questions until we run out of questions, and then we're going to go into testing. I'm going to, while we're doing this, I'm going to hand off a couple of you. I'm going to send you some links and just respond in Discord if you're available. What we'll have you do is actually leave at about 7:45 and then jump into the other side. So we're going to try to start right up at 8 with the second hour. So and anyway, so we're working through that, and that's kind of where we're going here. So Guy, go ahead and what do we got? What questions do we have?
First one's coming in from Alan Snyder in Cedar Rapids, and he says, I'm using a M1 MacMini to attend office hours, but of course that means I don't have a webcam or mic. Any suggestions on a good cam and mic to get for it and where to attach it? I would prefer no headphones, but I don't know if that is feasible.
Good, Karl.
So there are a few cameras that we talk about on the panel. The Logitech 920 is one, the Brio, Huddle Cam if you want the HDMI out. And then there are some better, more expensive cameras that give you a bit more features with HDMI out as well.
Yeah, I think that right now what I would say is that the Brio is the one that we've a lot of us have leaned towards because it gives you the most flexibility. You can actually pan and scan inside. Go ahead, Schy.
I have that new Brio smell, and what I just discovered is that Guy Cochran can control it from his computer about 12 miles away.
Yeah, and
if somebody else wants to do it.
Yeah, but the big thing is that's one of the big reasons we use it is because the bottom line is there's a lot of this whole reaching up and grabbing onto your webcam and trying to get just a little bit lower and a little bit higher, and being able to kind of pan and scan around makes it a lot easier. So that's one of the reasons we do it. And we send them out in all of our kits because we want to be able to make these fine adjustments there. You can see Schy is having somebody else make those adjustments for him. So
hands-free.
Like magic. So anyway, so I think that is why we like the Brio so much. Go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah.
So from a mic standpoint, the Yeti Nano is pretty good. That's what I'm using. It's $100.
Yeah.
Plugged directly into the MacBook.
Yeah, and with all of these things can scale up. So you just keep going. So the some of us are using bigger cameras, bigger mics, like we have high PR40s are pretty popular here. Go ahead, Chris.
Could you explain why some sort of separate listening device, whether it's an earbud or big Princess Leia's like this, is important?
Yeah, what happens is that Zoom is the echo cancellation that Zoom does. Basically, if you think about it, it sees a waveform, that it's sending in. It sees another waveform that's coming out. And so what it's looking for is the waveform that's going out of the speaker. If it matches the waveform that's going into the microphone, it says, I'm going to get rid of these, so I'm going to cancel these out. But it has to, that's surgery. It's grabbing all of that content and ripping it out. It's doing a pretty good job of it. But what it basically does is it's taking things out of what you're talking about. It's actually taking stuff out of your voice when it does that. So, and it tends to push things down on the other side, on your side. And so when everybody has got a headphone on or is muted, you end up with a full duplex, basically able to talk back and forth. There's nobody being ducked. There's nothing being ripped out. All of those things are gone when everybody's on headphones or muted. And so you really want to, it's just a great way to make a meeting better is to have everybody have headphones on. So it makes a huge difference for the listener and for each other. The thing we have to understand is that there's a lot of things that we get used to, in video conferencing that we don't have to get used to, and we don't understand why we have this thing called, Zoom fatigue and all these other things. And that's because we have bad audio and bad video. And these are parts of the things, and sure, it's easy, but generally things can be easy or they can be great. Very rarely both. So it's worth it. I think the reason that all of us can do this for hours is because we've fixed our audio and our videos so that it's actually more, just easy to do. In some cases, I find it easier to be here than in person. So that's a whole other piece, but it's because we fixed the tech. Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
So for my headset, I'm just using one of my Power Beats Pro. Mm-hmm. So if you already have something like this, you can just use that.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas says, Live Nation is outfitting 60 music venues with turnkey live streaming facilities. Online articles explain that fully virtual live streams can be very lucrative because of the lack of in-person costs involved. This is the music industry speaking. When will the events industry catch up?
Yeah, the music industry is spending a lot of money on what Live Nation is doing. They're all talking about it right now, whether it's theater chains or venues or the promoters. It is a huge investment right now. Go ahead, Chris.
I've made a very good career over the last 20 plus years, that portion of my career, dealing with live event producers. And every one of them in the last 15 years has gone into bigger and bigger and wider and crazy screens at the front of their halls. I think that there's an enormous amount of money to be made in helping those people take that widescreen experience and somehow getting it into a 16:9 streamable version. Every producer for the next year is going to want to be able to add the word hybrid to the end of their thing. They just don't know how to do that. Right. They're going to try and just like, well, I'm streaming it. Well, that's not hybrid yet. And I think there's ways to do it. I think the best example of a hybrid event in our society is sports. You go to an arena and you watch a game. That's one experience. You sit at home and watch it on TV. That's another experience. Definitely a hybrid event, but it's kind of two things happening simultaneously. And they're going to want to do it. We can help them do it, even if it's not ideal.
Yeah, I also go to the event and watch it on the Jumbotron, so that's a double hybrid.
Well, I think that that's always a good thing to think about is how far back do you get before you're just watching the screen? Because once you get that far back, those people would probably be better off in their own home. You know, so the I mean that's part of the whole process there. And I do agree with you. I mean, there's things you can do with 10,000 or 20,000 people that it has its own process when you think about a football game or something like that. Although I will say that the hybrids that work are the ones that decide that the online audience is more important. So they're making sure that everyone has a good time at a football game or a basketball game, but you're very clear if you're there, especially if you know what you're looking at. You're very clear that the broadcast comes first. You know, so there are big, long breaks. There are things that you don't think about when you're watching TV, like the commercial breaks, where everyone just stands around and fiddles about because they need to pay for this. And so the online audience in a football game or a basketball game or a soccer, not as much as a soccer game, I think, but in the United States, the online audience definitely is the priority. You know, and they'll shut the whole thing down for. To make sure that things work for them. They don't really care where the cameras are in that respect. And so that's a different, thing. And I think that that's where when people do hybrid, you do have to think about the online audience as the priority. It used to be when I started doing streams, the online audience was, 200 people and there were 3,000 people in the room. It made sense to ignore the people online, just make them happy with a little video. But now that's flipped. And we're having a handful of people in the room and a giant stream out. I will say that as the ROI starts to sort out, hybrid will go away. Because, it will largely go away because unless you're sports, it doesn't pencil out of the impact that you're going to get from a digital first event. Now, there's reasons to do in-person events, VIP, and so on and so forth. Small, under 300 special folks. That there's a whole world there that is worth doing. And then there's digital first. That'll be, everything's going to be, digital. You may still have physical and audiences. So remember, you can have the speaker. You want to think about this. The speaker can be in a studio coming to theaters, and that means if you put the speaker in a room with a bunch of people, then the people in the theater they know that they're in the back of the room. When the speaker's in a studio talking to everyone equally, everybody's in the front row. And so the thing is you can't put anybody in the same room as the speaker. In fact, I don't even like putting speakers in the same room as other speakers. Like I want them all going through so that when they're talking to each other, the online audience is intercepting like in the middle. It's actually a more special experience to see a round table like this. Like we could never do what we're doing here every morning. Impossible in the real world to put 20 people in a round table and have a useful conversation. This is impossible, and we're going to continue to make what we're doing right now and making this better is continuing to take this impossible concept and make it even better, until it's completely impossible, for you to even get anywhere near it in the real world or even in broadcast, like traditional broadcast. And so I think, I'm kind of running off on this, but I think about this a lot. I always think about, when I think about a physical event, I think about a Ferrari, like this special, fast, it's just for this thing. When I think about a virtual event, I think of a cigarette, a boat, like high speed going through the water, able to do it. When you think about hybrid, you just want to think about an amphibious unit. Like it works in both of those areas, but it's kind of clunky. It doesn't really do either of them very well. But that's how you want to think about those things. And so anyway, but that's the comparison, of what you want to think about. And so that's why hybrids will they'll still be around because people still use amphibious units, but they'll be like, kind of doesn't go very fast anywhere. All right, go ahead, Nigel, and then Richard.
Yeah, there's an interesting example of the hybrid event, which is when they relay a show from the West End or from Broadway to a theatre. And while it may be the only way to see that cast perform that show, it's a very strange experience in the theatre, and it's like a half experience. Yeah.
So the test that I've seen there that was really compelling is a 360 experience for that type of thing where you got to sit in a seat. It was actually a seat that would be better than anything you could sit in, because imagine not having to worry about the people behind you and being able to go right into the pit and then go straight up, and be like right in the middle of the stage and be able to watch it as an experience. and not with the current resolution, but a higher resolution headset, the pretty good experience there that you really, and that's one of the few places where I felt like 360 really worked well, because you really felt like you were at the theater, and you can give that experience, whether it's a headset or it's and if you start thinking, or, as the headsets go higher, when we get to 6K, 8K headsets with HDR and higher frame rate and so on and so forth, you're going to be able to sit in that theater and you will have a better seat than anybody ever had, and I don't think, to your point, that I think that they may have the audience behind that, but the audience will just know there's a big old camera that's going to take, and again, this has become digital first. It's going to be the thing, because there are 100,000 people behind that camera that are really paying for this, and the people in the room are just there to give feedback to the actors, so, and it's different. Again, it'll supersede that process. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, just one of the interesting things that came up today is talking to a local festival, because we're kind of on the periphery of the UK. There's already local artists from England and abroad who just won't come back over for festivals. They just want to do an online first experience from now on. Yeah, I mean, when we're talking to artists, I mean, artists love, we've said this before, they love talking about how much they miss the fans and everything else. And they do miss the fans for the first 10 shows. And then after that, it's just money, and that's the thing that we want to remember. And I think that when artists realize they can make as much money, we've seen some live streams already that have been incredibly successful, and with Live Nation and with different theater chains and everything else. Imagine being able to play a show once to 1 million people. And those people are at really good theaters. All these theaters that we're not going to use for movies anymore can be these live event spaces. And then being able to have those theaters, the people in those theaters show up in screens in front of you, like out around, and you can go, hey, Pittsburgh, hey, New York, whatever. And people are all cheering and part of that. And it can be a lot less expensive, and they can have an experience that they would only get if they spent $2,500 a ticket, and you don't have to travel, as a band. And the thing is, we can say that, oh, but the real experience is better. Yeah, well, albums are better than MP3s, but we don't make many of those anymore either. So we just have to remember that being better isn't going to outlast being, more applicable. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes, and just think, you can set up a merch table at the front of each one of those theater lobbies and sell 10 times the merchandise on one hybrid. You
can. That's definitely a thought process there. Or you just have, QR codes where people want to order stuff. They say, I want, they can look at the shirt. It can be a very small little thing. I can look at the shirt, take a picture of the QR code and order it, and then walk away, and it'll show up somewhere. So it can get a lot more efficient. Anyway, next question.
Andy Carluccio in Washington, D.C. asks, any advice on using external Thunderbolt enclosures with M1? I am trying to evaluate the limits of using DeckLinks with ZoomISO on an M1 MacMini. Looks like the 8 output card may exceed the available bandwidth for Thunderbolt 3, but it seems like the 4 output card would be fine.
Kind of surprised that the 3, I guess that's right. Yeah, I mean, it does seem odd, though, that it would run out, because 8 times, if you're doing 1080p, seems like that would be 20. What's the maximum bandwidth on the USB 3? Does anyone? Yeah, go ahead, George.
40 gigabits per second.
Yeah, so that's considerably less than the requirement for 6 3G outputs. Yeah, go ahead, George.
So I normally do 4 720p's for regular ingest outside of what we do here. So it should be fine on the M1 for 4. I've never really tried doing more than 4.
And we've been planning as we get ready to move this panel to that as well. What we're budgeting for is 4. 4 per M1. Is what we're kind of planning for that. So interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Would offloading it over the bandwidth be a solution? Like you have all the M1s creating the feeds over NDI and have them like a Windows PC outputting 8 of those over NDI, so the M1 doesn't have to output it?
Well,
yeah, for me, it's just easier to output. I want to get everything to baseband as fast as I can. I don't want it to be compressed because eventually we're going to promote the quality of the video. So there's a bunch of things that I don't want it to be compressed coming out. NDI is going to beat it up, pretty badly. And so maybe not more than Zoom's already beating it up, but I want to get it out there. I don't want to do a double compression. So, and eventually we may use products that give us higher quality video. so we want to, build a system that lets us do SDI out, from the computers. I think that's the focus that I have there. And again, I'm trying to build something that is absurd, so the NDI would totally work in most cases. I know that I'm crazy. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Gabriel Ung in Malaysia, and he says, in Office Hours 2.0, when using a PC per panelist, how are you making sure audio comes in correctly, as all PCs in the meeting will all get the same far end at different times, causing an echo or off-sync issues when only taken from one PC? How does your system handle double talk and awesome work?
Yeah, so that's all mix minuses, so they're not coming back. They're not. We have a lot of control over it. Obviously, the hosts also have, anybody on that's coming into the panel does have headphones on, but either way, we're able to manage it because we have ISO feeds. They're not being mixed together at that point. So, so by having ISOs with mix minus back to the Zooms, we're able to control that fairly effectively. If they have open speakers, and they don't have echo cancellation, it would be a huge problem. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. When switching an office hour program, should you use an iPad as a second monitor because of limited space, or just find a way to bring in second monitor? And he has a note, Sidecar seems to only work using Wi-Fi. I want to use Ethernet.
And Guy, also make sure to update the lower thirds. Jonas?
You actually want to use your iPad without Sidecar so you can see an attendee view. So you would just open the Zoom app, because then you see the result of your cutting. You don't need a second screen for cutting it, but I think for me, it helps me even as a panelist to have a second screen where I can see the output that is going out to the attendees.
Next question. Oh, go ahead, Beiju. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Yeah, I would just disagree with Jonas a little bit on this, that sometimes, depending on how we change the system, I like actually having the second monitor just monitoring the gallery view, because you want to see if someone's sharing a screen, you want to spotlight. Because if you're just watching the attendee, and if you're a host and you are switching between guest view and gallery view, depending on what you are sending out to the attendee, you sometimes can miss, like if, for example, Jeffrey is sharing a screen, John Petro is sharing a screen. If they're not in your first 4 or 5 panels on top of your speaker view, you will often miss them. So having a second monitor with just the gallery view on it can be useful.
Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Germany asks, can you control a SoundDevice's MixPre remotely over the internet? And if so, what would the setup look like?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yes, you can. There's a app, the Wingman app, which I've got now running on my PC here. So you can remote connect into the PC and then, or the Mac, sorry, and then control it that way via the Wingman app.
The challenge is really being able to do it across the pond. So the Wingman app works, I think, over Bluetooth, I believe, as a connection. And so the way we do that is we have control of a Mac Mini. So all of our small kits now go out with a Mac Mini, and so they have 2 things on them. They control the ATEM, which then controls the camera, and then we also control the MixPre from Wingman through a screen share, either AnyDesk or using the VPN, just using a VPN. So those are the 2 different ways that we control it. And from there, we can control both the camera and the logins and everything else, but we can also start and stop record. You don't have all the control. Wingman is levels and start record and a handful of other things, but it's not digging in and being able to reconfigure the MixPre. So it's not a complete control, but it's enough to get it started. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Sorry. Did they change Wingman? Because the original one, you could not adjust the levels. You see the levels, but you couldn't.
You can't adjust them. You're right. You can't. No, I'm sorry. You can see the levels, and you can start record and a handful of other things. But yeah, you don't have the configuration. And to your point, because there's knobs on the front, you can't. I've always wanted SoundDevices just to build one without any knobs. Like, I don't need you to. Like, I want to send one out that I control remotely and
nobody else controls locally, and we haven't seen it yet. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Fred Eric Eckert, and he asks, what is the quality of the SoundDevice's MixPre-Plugin MixAssist? Would you use MixAssist and Noise Assist at the same time?
Remember that MixAssist is 2 channels, I believe, is what you can get there. So you wouldn't necessarily put MixAssist on all the channels across in the same way that you might have Noise Assist is stereo. MixAssist, so the 2 of them wouldn't work. I mean, you could definitely do it on the outputs and then I think you can use MixAssist. I've never tried to do both. I have to admit that in the configuration that I've used these, I haven't needed to use both at the same time. Or I haven't used MixAssist a lot on these for a while. So anyone else? No? Okay. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jason Panks in Nashville, and he says, so Office Hours has a great setup and well explained. How do we convince our coworkers to use better audio video setups?
I find the best way to do it is to be an example is the thing that I usually go towards. Go ahead, Schy.
There's any way to let them watch themselves. That's usually the biggest experience is once you see it. And I have no idea why my image just changed. That was weird.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, record them and play them back, which is exactly what Schy said. Let them see and hear how bad they look and sound.
It's so bad. Anyway, go ahead, Jeffrey.
I use positive and negative reinforcement. Like, for instance, the video we're doing eye level, but if it's coming down from like a laptop coming up, I call that God mode. And if it's coming down, I call that peasant mode. And then they can kind of formulate in their head what that would look like on the other side.
Yeah, I think that's people are just very unconscious to how they look and so on and so forth. It's just like not having a mirror ever. and so when and so they just don't really get what they're doing. Listening to yourself and watching yourself is oftentimes very confronting, but worth the trouble. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK, and he says, any suggestions for a software-controlled pan-tilt platform to turn a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K into a kind of PTZ, only needed for live reframing, so it doesn't need a wide range of movement?
Go ahead, Karl.
So at the lower end as far as price, Data Video offers one that's pretty good. It does HDMI out and SDI out, so you can run long runs if you want to do SDI. Once you want something a little bit more features, then you're going to go up in price. But this will handle Blackmagic Ursa cameras easily.
Wow. I didn't even know. I haven't used Data Video for a while, and I didn't know that they made a PTZ camera. That actually looks relatively useful.
PTZ head.
That's a good price for a PTZ head. So that's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rachel Ann Clifton, and she says, asking for a friend suggestions on recommendations for an 8K 4320p HDMI capture card. Thank you.
Go ahead, Karl. Oh, can't hear you, Karl.
So as far as I'm aware, there is no 2.1 HDMI capture card at the moment. Astro, I think in Japan, may have one in the lab, but none for sale, I don't believe.
Yeah, I don't think that there is. There's the 8K card from Blackmagic, but that is a SDI-based card. You may have to convert. There's got to be an 8K HDMI to SDI conversion.
There is. So Astro in Japan do have one. They don't have a price on it because it's simply for labs. It's for people who want to test out these edge systems. But yeah, Astro in Japan.
Interesting. Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, and he says, earlier today, Guy reframed Schy's feed remotely. What was needed for Guy to have done that? Just a Brio webcam, or was it something else? I could probably show you here. I just went over to Schy and I right-clicked on him and I said, request camera control. And then he granted me control. So up on his screen appeared a little screen that said, do you want to grant Guy permission? And now that I've got permission, I've got this little joystick control and I can move left, right. I can widen out. And again, this is the Brio because it's in 4K and it's got more resolution than the 1920 by 1080. I can punch in without loss in actual quality, unless I go really extreme, which, do you mind if I go extreme? Yeah. So this is something that you got to enable in the meeting. So in the meeting settings, there is, this is a setting to allow participants to request camera control. Otherwise, you won't see it. And then when you're done, you can say, I'll go back to gallery view, and then I'm going to release by right-clicking and saying stop camera control. And now it says you have stop camera control, and he should have gotten a message on his side, and that's how it's done.
And
Excellent.
while you're doing that, there is a little box in the upper left-hand part of Zoom that says Guy Cochran is controlling your camera. What I can't find is where I can control my camera. So how do I do that?
You need to have your own. You need to get something like webcam settings is the one that or manual camera, and from there you can zoom in and pan and tilt. But I don't think you can do it actually from Zoom. You can't control your own camera from Zoom, but you can have it using webcam settings or manual camera on a Mac. You can zoom in and tilt, pan and tilt. Go ahead, Jonas.
And I'll be sitting over here now.
We use the same Zoom controls over the same PTC controls over Zoom for when I show stuff in the behind the scenes show format in the kitchen. That's a real PTC, then not digital PTC, but it's a real PTC that I control over Zoom.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Gabriel Ung in Malaysia, and he asks, has anyone experienced issues with external NVMe drives with M1 Macs? I have a Sabrent 2 terabyte NVMe and a pluggable, that's the brand, pluggable USB-C enclosure. No issues on Intel Macs, but M1 doesn't seem to detect the drives. It worked when plugged into Caldigit TS3 hub, though, thanks. And he has a note here that says, I've tried plugging the drives into a Mac Mini and a MacBook Pro.
I don't have, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Is this on USB 3 or 4, or is it Thunderbolt 3? That might make a difference. And what type of hubs you're going through as well.
Right. Yeah, I'm not certain what he's using there, but I have had some, NVMEs drop out. Like they show up and then they sometimes drop out, but I haven't had it just not show up so far. No, next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, what tools have you found most effective for routing audio to and from various applications on Windows? I know macOS has Rogue Amoeba's Audio Hijack Pro and Loopback, but what would there be a Loopback-like tool for Windows?
I think it's probably going to sound like a meal. Go ahead, Leland. I can't hear you, Leland.
His potato is rotten, I think.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Your potato is not transmitting. See, this is the problem. Potato, banana.
My mic froze up there. Sorry about that, guys. I switched the USB plug on it. Yes, he did mention Voicemeeter Potato, which is one of those by VB Audio. It's actually the V-band component to Voicemeeter that allows you to transfer audio through separate buses across PCs by using IP addresses. So that's one way. The other way would be to use Dante Via. They have a software application that's available for the PC that works a lot like Loopback, but isn't quite as feature rich, but it is available.
Not quite as stable. Go ahead, George.
I was just about to ask Leland, did they resolve the issue with VIA? Because it totally sent my my Dell into blue screen every time I used it.
Dell had a serious issue with VIA. It was actually a Dell hardware component issue. So I don't think it's prevalent on all PCs. I haven't heard any problems with any machines but Dell. So I would look a little deeper into that.
Next question.
Simon Ray in Shrewsbury, UK. What's a good color for a solid background? 50% gray, the much lighter middle gray at 18%, teal. What color would I ask for when having a roller banner made up for this? And green screen already available in parentheses.
Go ahead, Karl.
Yeah, I've been experimenting a little bit with this. So I'm finding that this kind of middle gray, I've got a bit of a whitewash in the center here, but I'm finding that works quite nice on a television and on monitors as well.
That's great. All right, go ahead, Jonas.
It always depends on the foreground. So if you want to use it as a backdrop for your, when you use it on Zoom, you might want to go into the teal-ish gray direction, so it makes your skin color pop in front of it, so you have a distance there.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from George Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C., and he says, Alex, is there any light on your background?
There is. Yeah, so there's a it's hard for me to go back and get it in the way I'm wired in, but there's a I have a Mixpanel 60 that I'm using for that. It's it's overkill, but any little light that just goes up, and it's just nice and soft, and it goes up, and so there's a slight blue light right now. Sometimes I change the color, but it's blue at the moment, and it just gives a little bit of a change in texture that's there, but it's a gray background. I prefer gray backgrounds so I can use light to color them rather than have to deal with whatever I bought. So yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I was just curious because I do have a gray background also, and I'm trying to figure out what's a happy medium for office hours. So if I turn it off, that is my gray. Yeah, but that's a blue light. So I'm trying to figure out what to light it up with. That way I don't, if I want to just get rid of the blue completely.
Mine's set very low. You know, okay. So mine's like at 18% or 20% or something like that. So it's just a hint of it. And sometimes I make it brighter. If I'm in a lot of meetings, I tend to turn it down so it doesn't there's coming into a meeting looking really good, and then there's coming to a meeting looking like a studio. That is what I try to kind of think through. I try to not make it look like I'm working too hard. So I tend to turn the light down a little bit when I'm in meetings. So yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, if a concert venue is adding turnkey live streaming capability, how will the venue ensure that the quality of sound and mix is what the audience expects from an artist of their caliber without a separate mix engineer for the stream? Would they end up hiring a house stream mix engineer?
Go ahead, Karl.
So the first part is you got artist to microphone. So that artist to microphone is crucial, and there has to be a human in the loop there. So you can't really have turnkey when it comes to microphone and artists.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I think if this gets big enough, and again, you're looking at the online audience as the premier audience, then probably the band's mix engineer who knows their material is going to be mixing the stream in an isolated room or truck, and the house engineer that's mixing for the few audience that's there actually in the building is going to be the venue engineer. So the band engineer will end up moving from house to stream.
And what's interesting is that we did a show with Metallica, and they did not use, so they just took the raw stems, and then they passed them into Pro Tools. So they had it wasn't the person that would normally mix their concerts that went out to the stream. It was the person that mixes their albums. So that's the person who passed it through and created the mixes during rehearsal for how they wanted to mix each they created that process, and that was fairly effective. Go ahead, Courtney.
Does anyone know if the Dolby or THX certified decoders that are in these theaters can decode a stream-based Dolby 7.1 or 5.1 mix? Or even better,
there are decoders that can do that. I can't get too detailed in there, but there's definitely decoders that can do that. Because that's just coming in as that can be relatively easily converted. So depending on what what the theater has in it, it just needs to get the signal, as it's coming in. So if you can convert it to an HDMI or embedded SDI or whatever, you can. A lot of times you're not going to necessarily stream it with the objects. So the Atmos objects is probably not something that it'll do, but what you can do is send a 5.1.4 or 5.1 stream, or 5.0 or 16. There's a lot of different ways that you can send that, and a lot of times that can be it's a little bit different. I think that eventually we'll be streaming objects through it, but that's not something that we're doing right now. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to add what I've done in the past with things like festivals that do live streams. They'll actually price out and build, the audio company will, a separate audio split that's direct from the mics to a new console. And there's another engineer in a truck somewhere or another room that does that. And often, like Jeff said, the recording engineer that did the album will sit next to that engineer, or they'll take over the controls themselves and push those buttons.
And again, the venues that, I don't know what Live Nation's doing, but a lot of venues are looking at no audience in the putting screens up, and the reason for that is they can put the cameras anywhere. So imagine that the entire front of the stage is filled with cameras and jibs and all kinds of people and things like that. And so trying to accommodate what they're realizing as they start to build these out is that if you really want to build that show for a theater, you stop having any room for anybody to see anything. so the, because you're just crowding it into that process. When you can not pay attention to the audience, you're able to do that. And then you put the virtual audience up above all of that, so the band can look up and see them. But it's becoming more and more the realization as people do these tests. So I think that's what we'll see in the future for some bands. I mean, there'll be people who want to still do live shows, and there'll still be Coachella. Evidently, they just announced that Coachella's happening again. There's an experience there that can't be replaced. But I think that when it comes to making money, the ROI is going to be so much higher in virtual that they're not going to, that's going to become the majority of what we do. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana, and he says, any recommendations on 4K rack-mounted monitors with HDMI pass-through and SDI, less than an Alex price preferred? Note, was looking at a Philbrook 17.3-inch 4K rack-mount broadcast monitor.
I have not used it yet. Go ahead, Karl, but I'll let Karl start first. Go ahead.
So just the Blackmagic, I think it's 15.6-inch rack-mounted 4K monitor. It does have pass-through as well.
I don't think it has HDMI though. I think that's the challenge there, is that there's no HDMI input. So the one that I got sent a notification for that looks like it does many of these things, at least, is a Lilliput of all there. It's not 4K. So it's 1080p, and I don't know whether it's a 4K composite. Anyway, it has SDI and HDMI. It will do. It'll do SDI, HDI. It'll convert back and forth. It will pass through. It'll do quad view. It's a pretty interesting monitor that they sent me to look at. So we'll see if we can get one in the office and show it off and see if it works. Next question.
Next one's coming in from JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California. Is Karl building those slides in real time, or are they prepared ahead of time?
So essentially what I'm doing is, when I hear a question that's coming up, I'll know the answer internally, but my accent and my speed of the way I speak may go over some people's heads very fast. So I kind of use a visual aid so people can go back and see this rather than me just speaking at a million miles an hour.
But are you throwing those together while we're talking?
Yeah. So it takes me I'll know the answer, so I know exactly what product to go look for.
Yeah.
The only thing I want to check is the American price, so I'm putting the American price in. But yeah, so I'll know what I want to suggest. It's just I want a visual representation because my accent may be a bit too thick and
take it to a whole nother level. We just see once we start going, hey, we're going to turn this up a notch. What's great is everybody here goes, why can I turn it up a notch? Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, what we're trying to do as we, this is further down the road, is having a graphics team that during these shows that is doing exactly what Karl's doing. Maybe we'll persuade Karl to do it every once in a while, or at least get the team ready. But to have people throwing things together while we're talking and getting ahead of these questions, so that there is those visual aids. Karl's doing it really well. It looks great, and it's just done. I can't believe he's doing them that fast. So it's really, really well done. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was going to ask Karl, do you have Photoshop connected to your ATEM Mini, or are you just cutting to a separate computer that you're composing those on?
Keynote.
Yeah, Keynote
for the win. Keynote for the win.
Keynote is so fast because it's instant alpha. Like, I've been putting together this demo that I'll show you guys on Saturday, and for education, and I've decided to that I don't want to be behind a slide, so all the slides are all composited into the into my video, so they're all just kind of popping up from the bottom, popping in from the side, moving around, and I'll never go back. But the funny thing is, every time you're in Keynote, you're just like, I can't believe I can do all this in Keynote. So it's a really powerful tool for presentation. Next question.
Next one's coming in from our friend Hasmuk in Cape Town, and he says, in the market for a second Synology NAS, current one is 5 years old. Use case is data storage. Looking at a 6-disk setup with 2 disks for failover. Too many options on the Synology site. Which specific model would the panel recommend?
It's a really good question, because I went to we bought them in the past, and I was getting ready to buy a Synology, and I got to the website and I just got confused and stopped. Like, I was just like, I don't even know what I need here. So who has Synologies, and what would they
I think
I went to that site a few times, Alex, and every time I say, okay, I'm going to sleep on it, I go back. It's been going on for days now.
I know it's been going on for like 6 months for me. Like I just go up there every once in a while going, okay, I'm going to buy it. And then I start going down the path and I'm like, I don't know if I need that or not. Go ahead, John.
So I have a Synology, but it's not the one I'd probably recommend for you. It's just a 4-drive Synology that works. It was like a $400 bay. So I wanted something really basic for home use, personal use. You would probably want at least a 5-play with the additional flat slot for an SSD for caching. That's probably what I'd recommend for you.
Okay. Yeah. And probably same. Hosmak and I are probably in the same boat. Yeah. I want to put something together that's closer to, I don't know, 80 terabytes is kind of what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. I saw one that I thought I liked, which was about $1,200. And then I scaled down, and the 6-disc one is about $700. I thought that would be appropriate.
I remember back in, I believe it was 1991 that I bought a 2CI, a Mac 2CI, and I got it with 122 megs of RAM, or not RAM, 122 megs of hard drive. And I bought Pro Tools One, for, I don't know, $6,000. And they were like, why is the drive so big? And I'm like, because I'm doing audio. we didn't say because I'm doing video. That would be impossible. But I was like, I'm going to do audio on this thing, and it's going to be my workstation. And it was great. John.
Yeah, if you want 80 terabytes, all you need is a 10-bay device with the 16 gig or terabyte hard drives, and then that way you can just mirror them.
There we go. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Gregory Viger in Montreal, and he says, how or what do you recommend when adding a vMix call into a production for green screen? Can you apply virtual green screen in vMix call, or do you need to send the client a portable one, or other ways to achieve the best, most cost-effective results?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Leland.
Typically, we use that setup on some of the vMix calls we do with License to Rant, where we have 2 guest callers come in with their own green screen setup. You could do it one of 2 ways. You can either have the caller use a virtual camera component via OBS or another vMix setup where they create their own green screen background and then come into the call, or you have them come in with just their green screen, and then that input can be controlled for color keying within vMix.
The main thing you want to think about when you think about keying is the data rate. You want to key it with the best data rate you can possibly get. So the best data rate is uncompressed on their side, getting keyed from the thing. And the best is to oversample it. So like when you see, I used to key for this show, and I was keying at 4K and then outputting at 1080p, because basically in most cases your video camera is putting out what we call 422, which means that for every 4 pixels of black and white, there's only 2 pixels of color. And so you're at basically half resolution, for that. So we want to oversample. We want to get that this is the best, and this is not the least expensive, but this is the best way you want to think about that. The next step is to key it locally. So like, for instance, when you key in Skype will actually key it you can key it at the computer, or with OBS, or with other things like that. You're keying there and then sending it out. That's going to be a higher quality. Once you send it through WebRTC, which is vMix call, or through Zoom, or through anything else, that green screen is now like what was, this much data is now this much data. It's a tiny little band, clip, and you're now trying to get hair detail and everything else out of that, and so that's the real challenge that you have with this process. Next question.
Gabrung in Malaysia. Hi, a quick follow-up from my earlier question about audio in Office Hours 2.0. Are all the panelists in separate breakout rooms within the same meeting, or are all the panelists in the same meeting room? Trying to understand the audio signal path. Thank you.
So in this meeting that we're having in the first hour, we are all in the same meeting. So we're all together, and this is a shared audio path. So this is different than what we're about to do in the second hour. And by the way, I sent out some links to Discord to a couple folks. Just please reply and let me know if you're jumping in. If not, I'll send the links out to someone else. But look in Discord and if you are, go ahead and drop out and go into the other one, except for Guy. Guy, don't do that. Anyway, so when we go to the second hour, everybody joining at that point, the main panelists that you see in the second hour are actually joining a separate window. So that means a separate meeting. Now they're all joining the same meeting, but they're pushed into separate breakout rooms. So what happens is people come in, to the main room, and then we have a breakout room for each person that's going to be in the show. So essentially we push them into each one of these breakouts. Now on the other side of that, we have a Zoom room that's in the same one, a different Zoom room that's in sharing that meeting. So it's just two people in it, the Zoom room and that person. All the audio and video goes in and out of these Zoom rooms. And so basically they feed that back in, they pull the audio out. What that means is that we have a independent path of audio and video for each person. So we have we have returns that go back to them, don't look like the show. We have audio and video, mix minus, comms, all kinds of other stuff that allows us to do that. And so that's how that process works. And so it's a fairly complex setup inside of our system to allow all that stuff to happen. But when you do that, now we have a lot of control. We're able to, talk to people and hear them and affect their audio and not have them step on top of each other, record their ISO tracks. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jason Panks in Nashville, and he says, any way to color correct my Dell monitors I use on my Mac? I love the new way the Apple TV does it.
Go ahead, John.
So I have a Mac. I have a Spider.
Yep.
Use a Spider. It just hangs over it comes apart, hangs over the monitor, over a section, and then it color corrects it. And then it'll prompt you to redo it every month. I actually color correct the monitors because I'm using them both for PC and Mac for each one separately. And then the profiles get loaded whenever I'm using each one.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
What's the brand name on that product, please?
It's a Data Color.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in Makana.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I think
you can find the used ones like the 4 and 5 for pretty cheap on eBay too.
Yeah. And that's all I've used for I don't know how long, a long time, that you hang them down. But having that cycle, now remember that's connected to your Mac. So if you go out of your ATEM or something else, that doesn't correct for that. It just corrects what because your Mac is setting up the gamma and the output and color coming out of the Mac and getting that information back in. So if you'll need something else for that. Next question.
Matt Cool in Montreal, Quebec. Can you suggest an inexpensive color correction device to calibrate my variety of monitors, or at least get them close?
We sure can. It's a Spider. The timing of those were perfect. So anyway, yeah, go ahead and that's the answer. Next question.
Next one is Alex Buckland in the UK, and he says, "What is Alex's telestrator setup? Didn't we do this yesterday and the day before?"
I know. No, it's good. I'm getting better at it though as we go. And Hosmuk has already had his team will help us build a video for it. But what I should do is do a Fenwick for it. That's what really is missing is maybe Hosmuk can put together a Fenwick over black so that we can so they can just go pop and pop up so I can answer it quickly. But I'll answer it right now. But we'll build one so that you can answer it. We can answer it in the show, but we should just put a video up on our new site. The web page or the YouTube thing is in process now, so we'll have it not next week, but the week after. It's been built. Anyway, but yeah. So basically, I have a Wacom tablet, and then I have a Mac Mini, and I have an ATEM. And basically, the Wacom tablet has USB that controls. It tells it where this pen is, right? So that goes into the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini has an HDMI out, and it goes into the ATEM. And so that's just one of the channels that goes into it. The ATEM's
program goes out and goes back into the Wacom, into the Cintiq. That's what I'm using here. And so what that means is that I'm just looking at the program when I look down at this. And what really revolutionized this, by the way, was when the ATEM minis came out, because it's all HDMI. Before, I was converting to SDI, and the latency made it really uncomfortable to use. So this is really when this kind of revolutionized the whole process. So now what I do is I use a downstream key inside of my ATEM, and basically I have just a black and white program that I'm running, but you can use Procreate, you can use a lot of other things. And I just have it black over white. You can also add color and so on and so forth. I don't do that, but you can. That goes in as a black and white image. That's used as the key for the downstream key. And then I use a color, in this case, green, for the fill. And then that downstream key is just comped over, and then that output goes here, and it goes out to the program. And so that's how that works. And it's very useful. I use it all day, every day. When I'm talking, this morning I was managing a shoot in Europe, or not managing it, but being part of it. And I was trying to explain something, and it was so nice to be able to just take their feed. This is a feed coming out of a, in this case, it was a feed coming out of a high-end Sony, going through a video conferencing back to me. And I was able to kind of pop it up and go, see this? You know, what I'd really like is this. And being able to do that was super useful. Anyway, is a lot less explaining. Go ahead, Hasmukh.
A good teacher is somebody who is willing to show something over and over again. I was going to have a snarky response and say, watch yesterday's show at 28.44. That's exactly where Alex showed it.
No, I think that when people ask us the same question over and over again, we just get better at answering it. And so I just use it as an opportunity to answer it again. And this is, if you watch all the times that I've done this, you'll watch it get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner as I answer it, of being able to how to describe it and everything else. And now we're ready for a video.
Today's one was better than yesterday's.
See? Every day it needs to be better. I cut my mushroom. Most days I cut my mushrooms slightly better than the day before. I have mushrooms in my thing, and I slightly faster, slightly more accurate. They're almost down to the point where the cuts are the thickness of every cut is exactly the same. I'm working on that. So it's just a matter of just constant, iterate and dominate. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I think what's stopping me from using the Cintiq is because I tried all the different software, and it's all the little icons and little things. So as soon as you release your software for doing this, I think then that's really what makes it nice and simpler. All the other options I've tried, that they work, but they're kind of clunky. So
yeah, the hardware, just having the hardware do it and have it dedicated to that. I have a computer that's all it does is that thing. And when it's set up that way and it's on all the time, like literally there's no time when I go into a meeting anywhere that I don't have Telestrator. Like it's just part of, I'm not setting it up for this. I'm not using the big thing that I'm with my kit, at least at my office or my home office, is that it's static. Like I'm not changing things, very often. I had to rip the camera out and now it's all, not right. But the, almost everything else, as I improve it, I don't look at it like I'm going to put something in temporary. I'm going to put something in specific. Go ahead, Leland, and then Schy.
Yeah, there's just another software solution for those who aren't going the hardware route that Alex just described, and I've brought this up in the past as well. Windows System Internals, which is an old app from back in the day, which is still available, contains an app called ZoomIt, and it's a PC-based app that allows you to do much of what Alex just did, change colors on the screen and bring in text overlays and timer overlays and such of that. It's pretty easy to use. The way I have it set up here is I run the app. If you want to search it, it's zoomit.exe. It'll come up on a Windows MS website, so you can download it free of any concern for malware or anything like that. And it installs in your taskbar so that you can find it relatively easy. I have it installed on a second computer, which has a display with a green background, and that allows me to bring it in as a desktop capture in NDI and then just key out the green on the screen, allowing me to put the colors over top as a layer overlay inside vMix. So there's a workaround in software, but it is a little more technically involved than what Alex is doing.
For me, it's just nice because it's just there. Like I just tap it, and I don't even tap it. Like anytime I want to draw, I just know that I can go. You'll see me start at the beginning of the show just to make sure it's on. You'll see this little thing in the corner. Like I'll just do this just to make sure that it's running. But generally,
it's always running. Go ahead, Schy.
I love the Wacom tablets. I've been using it for a long, long time because of the repetitive features that a mouse does to my hand. The question I have is, A, would you use the word Cintiq early on in your presentation? And B, to define what a Cintiq is
A Cintiq is just it's a Wacom tablet with a screen.
Video monitor. And do you need that, or can you use a plain? Because I just have the plain.
Can't see what you're doing. It's like night and day. You know, it's like it. I mean, you can do it without looking, but it's a lot nicer. And so the one as well. I'm using the Cintiq. I think that might be the one, or is that a different? Who makes that one? Ken. And Nigel, I sent you a Discord if you want to take a look at that.
Oh, it's the Cintiq. This is the same as you've got the Cintiq 16.
I've tried a lot of other ones. Wacom finally dropped the price, and so there's the Wacom One or whatever that's like $400. At that point, at $700 or $800, I was looking at Chinese versions that were, $300, $350. At $400, I just get the Wacom. So it just they're solid and they just work. So I think they made a good business move in that area. Let's jump to the next question.
Jonas Dottel in Reutlingen, Germany says, what causes the black lines in the lower thirds for the questions?
I will have to look at that.
I have it on screen.
Oh, okay.
These weird black lines, and then there also is something on the key moving. Like if I switch to the YouTube feed, there's something moving there.
Let's see here.
So it seems like the key is something is strange there.
The key may be a little harsh, so we'll just have to look at that. It's probably just what it looks like in your capture, it looks like there's some kind of interlacing in there.
That's what confused me, because normally that's not a key down. Yeah.
So that is probably, it's good for us to see there. I'm fairly certain that what that is how the PC is set up to output for some reason. So that PC may be outputting interlace instead of progressive. So we will fix that. I think that's probably the problem. All right, that's good. I'm glad you pulled that out. As for those watching again, we're figuring it all out in front of all of you. It's the first time we've used those here, or with these computers. We've used the lower thirds a lot, but not with usually with a Mac and not PCs. The PCs were just available, and so it's probably just a setting. Let's jump to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, is there any way to run multiple Zoom clients on one machine and use Loopback to split audio from each client to a separate audio device, or do you need more than one physical device for each Zoom feed?
To our knowledge, you need more than one physical device for each Zoom feed. There's not any way to, each person has to actually be in a different meeting, because the meetings are all muxed together. So there's not any way to separate those currently. You can separate the video soon with ZoomISO, but still the audio is still muxed. Go ahead, Leland.
The only way I was able to create a similar situation is I came in with 2 PCs, 6 virtual machines running on those 2 PCs using VirtualBox, and I was able to create 6 separate Zoom accounts on basically aliased emails. Like I would use my email plus whatever user I wanted to have. And that created the account so I could come into separate breakout rooms. And that allowed me, but go ahead, you have a question, I can tell, X. What do you want to ask?
No, I think the question is, was it muxed? Were they all in the same meeting, or they're sharing they're in separate meetings?
We had audio within separate breakout rooms. So I had to include Voicemeeter in that process so that I could pull audio from the user that was in one breakout room into the user of an audio of another breakout room. So there was a lot of mixing.
The way a lot of us do that is the breakouts. You can send them all in the same room. The number one thing to do by the way, is don't let them wander around if you're making them guests. And the other thing is that you want to make sure that we have kind of a rule that we've built up or building up. When someone goes into the main room, you get them out of there in 60 seconds. Like just pull them out of there as fast as they can. That room is worthless. So just get them out of there, because you have to keep on asking them for permission. Never let them back into the main room again. And then once you get them in there, you can start moving them around and everything becomes seamless. There's your pro tip for the day. Go ahead, Jonas.
And if the question is if you can run multiple Zoom clients on a machine, you can do that if you have a flag set by the support team. Then you can join multiple different meetings.
Last question of the first hour, and I'm going to drop out halfway through this, so just keep going.
Douglas Carmichael asks, at a large event like Coachella, would there be a common network infrastructure Dante 2110 transporting video and audio across the site, or would the infrastructure be specific to each stage or quadrant of the site?
My experience with Coachella is both. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I think the local stages would each have their own Dante setup to keep audio isolated from everything else, except for the final feed that might go out for broadcast or something.
Yeah, typically that's the approach there. Has anyone worked on any of those festivals? I've been in the truck, Coachella, but yeah, all of those tend to be switched and mixed on their own. So I'll let you guys talk amongst yourself for just a minute. Jeff was so fast, I couldn't get out fast enough to hide this transition that we're about to do.
Thinking about getting one of those Wacom tablets. Does anyone here have one? Does it require another HDMI connection, or how does it get the video signal into the tablet?
It's a display.
Yeah, go ahead. HDMI.
You need the you obviously got. Do you have an A10 mini? Okay, well then, yeah, if you've got an A10 mini with the tablet, then the way that I do it, like Alex feeds it into using the Mac Mini, so it's one feed's going into the Mac Mini, and then the video out, the HDMI out from the Mac Mini is then going into the A10.
But make sure to understand the difference between the word tablet and Cintiq, because they have many of the plain tablets that is a pen.
I can't hear you, Schy.
Device.
Sorry,
I can hear.
I was getting a phone call at the same time. It's not.
That's what it was.
It's me.
We can hear.
Phone call.
My thing switched.
And we're gonna start
phone
talking.
call.
So yeah,
Okay.
the phone call came in. I'm jumping back in to chat with everybody. So we're now in the different system. So exactly what we talked about before. We have grabbed a handful of people. So we've got John and Chris and Beju. Guy is now in to manage questions on this side. Nigel's in there as well. So we're kind of putting these together. So now we have our little six up here that I feel like I'm very cropped.
Should we be seeing?
Yeah, and so anyway, so for those who are watching, what we've done there, we're testing. That was a test of a more seamless jump from the first hour to the second hour. It still requires me to drop out for a minute or a second to jump in.
YouTube feed works, but we can't see it in our meeting yet.
You're not getting the return yet. Yeah. So we have to figure that out as far as why we're not seeing it now. I think that eventually we will, not need the webinar. In fact, the webinar makes this much harder. We've been talking about it for the last day and a half. Like, it's just really hard to do this because sending the broadcast out, because especially if we want to talk to the hosts, feeding this back in as a broadcast and then having the hosts come back in is a thing. So I think that we're definitely on our last days of needing that process to do that. And so I think did we just lose somebody there? Did we just drop somebody out there? Anyway, maybe that was Guy, or I think we're still swapping those things out. And I'm pretty cropped, I think, as we came in, in my little square. So I feel like the Brady Bunch thing, but very Brady Bunchy. So anyway, and we're still, I think, working on the return to get back to the webinar. So what is nice for me now is that I can see the program, so I know what's going on there. I can see every person. So no matter what Nate does in the program, I can see everyone. So the way we have this set up on my end is that we're using one of the and one thing for Nate and Kevin is to turn off the meters. There's audio meters on all the windows. So we're using a super source out of the Constellation, just one of the extra ones, super source 3 or super source 4. And what we did is we put everybody in those super sources. And so, it's not a super source, but a multi-view. So in the multi-view, so not 3 and 4, but multi-view 3 or 4, so it's great because we have the names of each person, and they're in. We basically, if you think about the quadrants, we broke the bottom ones into smaller quadrants, and then the top one side is program, and the other side is now the grid view. Now, unfortunately, I still can't, the way the grid view is there, maybe because it's not full screen. I don't know if Kevin can make that full screen, but I can't really see the grid view probably well enough to interact with it, usefully. So that'll be another thing that we probably have to think about as far as how that works. I think we just need to try to go to full screen here. I think that Kevin's about to do that. Yeah, so that works a little bit better. And I think that if I'm going to try pinning this. There we go. Yeah. So now I can see that there. Now, for some reason, we're not getting our video back into your screen. So that's the new problem that we have here. And again, for those watching, we are testing this idea of moving forward, where the second hour has a smaller panel or an individual that we're interviewing. So we've also moved away from the 16:9 to fit the. Now, I do think that from a design perspective, I do think we want some kind of logo. I know we built it now. We went to square so that we could fit more people in, but I feel like we want to brand it somewhere. I guess maybe that's my old broadcast thing of making them a little bit smaller so we have a little bit of area to brand somewhere. So that might be something for us to think about. Other thoughts that people have about it as they're looking at it? Is this the only build we have, Nate? Go ahead and Chris Fenwick.
I was going to say that in the pre, I don't even know what you'd call it. When we were waiting for you to join our second hour, it's super awkward that we can't talk amongst ourselves yet. At this point, I can hear everybody. I can hear all the IFBs. I can hear Mickey. I can hear Andy. I can hear Nate when they talk to me, but we can't talk amongst ourselves. Like, hey, what are we going to talk about? Yeah. So I'm sure that's simple to do. Just
yeah. So that's a good note
mix,
for
minus,
Andy.
mix, submix.
Yeah, there's putting in a different bus, but we've definitely done that in the past with the system, is letting people talk amongst themselves. So that should definitely be a doable thing. That's a great point.
They'll totally make it.
But I think
it's like being sent to the green room, but not being allowed to talk to anybody else in the green room.
It's like the code of silence all by yourself there. But I think it's nicer. It'll be nicer for us when we want to bring guests in to not have it be like they kind of wander into the room and I think of the way we've been doing it is they kind of wander into the room randomly and sit down at one of the seats, and then we call them up, and now we have Joe, and then we're going to pull Joe up, and Joe's been sitting there for 15 minutes, and so it's kind of nice to have kind of a behind the stage experience for them to bring them in. We've had, I would say, a third of our guests come in with their audio too loud or too soft, and we have to correct them first. So being able to do all those technical checks before they get here, I think, is useful. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, should I be able to see the panel in my Zoom? Because I can just see me and a blank screen.
Yeah, no, you should be able to. So that's something that isn't working. Yeah, so you should be able to see. Well, you should get the same feed that I have, and so evidently you're not routed for that at the moment.
I just see a ZR5.
I see black.
Yeah, so we're figuring that routing out. brand new calculation here, figuring that out. So the right now, until we eventually want to give everybody something different, but in the short term, the goal is just to make sure that people can see something that's operational. I will say that once you guys see this, it's great. I'm just telling you, it works really well. John, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the?
In my second window, I just have my picture, and my main window, which I've got full screen. I've got the 8 squares at the bottom, the preview, and the program. It's a little. Oh, yeah, so you have that. The panel's a little hard to see.
If you pin yourself, or if you pin that return, that's what I did. So I pinned the return on my first screen, and now it's full screen, which works well, and I think I can see enough of the panel. Yeah, go ahead, Schy. We're going to try this. I'm going to throw to Schy.
Hey, yeah, this was at 8:07. I'm watching on Office Hours on Makana on YouTube, and I'm also got the Zoom window open. And at 8:07, I quickly saw Jonas, and then he flashed, and then we started getting the video feed back over into the Zoom room. So whatever buttons just happened, that was a cause and effect.
Yeah, very good. Jason?
Yeah. Would anyone mind sharing if they have like a behind the scenes camera of what you guys are seeing on your screens? It'd be good to see, I think.
Oh, there's guys showing that. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm seeing black on mine, so I have the Zoom room pulling me in, so I could kind of check and see what the other guys are doing, and still feel like I'm among my homies, my friends.
There's Chris. Chris is showing the return that I'm seeing, which is you'll see that's the. There's the. So that's you'll see the program, which is what's Chris showing there, and then you'll see next to it the panel. And then you have all of the folks that are in down across the bottom, which I think is actually working. For me, it's working really well. For a smaller group, I can see, everybody nice and clearly.
And we still have more seats
room
on the panel.
Yeah, exactly. but not empty. Yeah, exactly. So we want to be ready for up to 6. So we may have.
It really works well with the faces below because the panel faces are big enough that I could see expression, see eye blinks. Of course, Chris never blinks his eye.
Yeah, and we're getting, full frame rate, full resolution within those resolutions. So it's actually, for the handful of folks that are down there, it's clearer than the normal Zoom from us. Go ahead, Karl.
So I'm just guessing if you've got 8 spots and you've got one free, was there any use to having meters down there for the people in the panel?
I think that, once we go into this, it's really going to be something because now we have control over it. So this is really the audio engineer problem now. It's just going to be something that the audio engineer manages on the other end, however we have that set up. Yeah.
The meters over my shoulder don't actually show my voice. It seems
it's
superfluous that they're there.
Yeah, because the audio is not married to it. You're just because it goes out Dante, and it is superfluous, and we'll get those turned off. It's actually for me when we look at the program.
It's accurate.
Yeah, it would be cool. That would be. Everybody has their own meter. Unfortunately, it's black magic meters, which I don't really trust. So I don't know what I would do with those anyway. What I will say is that the one that's on program as the. Yeah, we can turn them off. Just turn all those off because they're it's the one that's actually bouncing is the most annoying because it's very distracting. Go ahead, George.
On the single shots, on the lower thirds, I know Alex, you're a little bit tighter frame, so it's hitting you right in the chin on the bottom. I know it's not really a big deal right now, but for looking forward, I don't know if that could be adjusted a little bit.
Can we pop up a lower third just so I can see? I didn't look at it there as clearly as I could have. Maybe just single out anybody and give them a lower third.
That's what I was going to say too. The lower third being centered just about always hits the person's microphone.
Yeah,
so I was going to suggest, put it to the right, but then John Edelson came on and his microphone's to the right. So it's going to be a little challenging to have it uniform.
Yeah, I think that we could put it to one side or the other, but the other thing is that I would, I don't know if we can throw it up. I've been trying to think about whether I like it at the bottom or not, and have kind of decided that number one is I don't care about title safe, so I'd probably just push it right to the bottom.
Yeah, I think it's too high.
I'd leave a little space, but I'd probably cut that distance in half, and then I would probably put it in the corner too, just to get it out of there. So there's no chance that it goes underneath the person no matter how they're cut. So I'd probably put it in the lower left, I think. Or lower left. It's hard for me to tell which one.
The only problem is something like Fenwick's shirt. That will probably pretty much bleach it out.
Yeah, that's going to always be a problem.
Line. It could also be one line. It doesn't need to be 2 lines.
The 2 lines is fine. I think I would just move it down. So that I'd cut that distance in half and put it over in one of the corners. Let's try down and left.
And if you made the very left corner of it opaque, it'd cover up the connection speed and the little.
There we go. Go ahead, Nigel.
Am I still the only one who can't see the program feed?
I can't see it either.
Are we rerouting that on our end? I don't know what's taking that so long.
It feels like I'm back in radio, so
yeah. So if Kevin's listening, if you can hear me, just route it. Like, this is a test. We need to get it fixed. So
it's working, but it's in a specific box called office hours.
No. I'm talking Nigel's. Some of the guests are only seeing black. This is the time to test it. So for Nate and Kevin on the other end, we need to fix it right now. like this is not okay. Oh, is this that return issue again? Something going on with those.
But is that universal to all the guests, or am I just getting special treatment?
No, we had this. This is what delayed the first
You're getting
Man in the Kitchen.
special treatment.
No, so John,
we're getting it fine
Nigel,
here in California.
So black, you're still getting black,
in
guy?
a different way. Yeah, I'm still getting black. I had to pull my vMix over to my teleprompter so I could look at you guys instead of off the screen the whole time. So
okay. Yeah, this is the. We've seen this before. I'm not sure. This was the thing we had with Man in the Kitchen where suddenly the returns weren't working. So we'll have to test that a lot more to make that work.
So guest 2, Fenwick's return just went black. So whatever changed, we're regressing.
Yeah, we're going the wrong direction.
And black for B as well.
Oh, so whatever we're doing, we're breaking
back
more
for Fenwick.
It's working fine here with me.
At the moment.
It's back again now.
At the moment, yes.
Oh, it's back. Okay, so some of the routing is coming through. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Have you thought of putting vMix between the returns so you could overlay like a custom HTML for everybody? And I found that if you put something between Zoom and the hardware, Zoom doesn't crash it or anything.
Yeah, we did. I mean, that's why we got the PCs, was to put vMix in there. And for those returns, what we did see is there's some latency. So when we put vMix in the middle, we're losing, I think, 3 to 4 frames. Which is, we're trying to keep. We're already doing kind of a double loop and everything else, and so we're trying to keep that latency as low as possible. So adding another 100 milliseconds was a problem for us. That was the problem when you went into vMix. Go ahead, Jason.
Speaking of Telestrator earlier, while some people are working on routing issues, Alex, would you mind giving us a little drawing of how things are set up and routed for you guys, audio and video, if you could?
Yeah, I don't know if I can do all of it. Really, really
all
fast,
on one screen.
Yeah, all on one screen. Yeah, exactly. So, there's a. Let's see if I can move over here a little bit, give myself some space. So, you have, of course, you have the Zoom rooms. And so they're basically the interface. They're going out into a meeting breakout room, and they're grabbing onto audio and video. The video for the Zoom rooms, I mean, I'm going to skip the router because it goes in and out of the router a couple times as it's passing through. But basically, they go into a FS HDR, which is going to let us color them, scale them, do a bunch of other things there, and then they go basically, again, through the router and then up to the constellation. And so they just look like, from Nate's perspective, they just look like a video feed. They're just a camera, so they're not anything else. So they all do that as far as video goes. Then the constellation sends it back. And I don't know whether the constellation is going through another FS. I don't remember whether it goes through another FS or not for a correction. And then that goes to the encoder. So the video pipeline is relatively simple. What's being returned is just from the constellation back again through the router is one of the multi-views. And well, for the ones where it's working, who's it not working for right now? Guy and Nigel, are you still seeing black?
Yeah.
Still seeing black.
Okay, so we're still working on that. So anyway, so that's the video pipeline. The audio pipeline, from the PC is using Dante. So we're using, the Dante virtual sound card. That goes out and that goes into the mixer. So it's a Yamaha QL1. So it's mixed there. Now things get a little bit complicated because I believe that coming out of that, and this has been changing a fair bit. So I'm going to do the last time that we talked about this, that it goes out to a BSS 806, and this is where we are marrying we're marrying Unity. So you have Unity comms, coming through Unity Connect. So those are passing back into the 806. The 806 is a pretty, it's just a nodal compositor for audio. So that creates that return signal. And then that return signal goes back to, I'm obviously creating a very simple chart for how that works, but the return signal goes back in. So that this goes out, or actually goes into the 806. This goes into the 806. The composite of that goes back to us. So that way, someone in Unity can talk to us in the ear. So like Nate is talking to me from Salt Lake City in my ear when he wants to talk to me, or any of the hosts, or any of the other co-hosts in this area, or back to you. He can talk back into that. That's coming in from Unity, which then goes into Unity Connect, which then goes to BSS, which then comes back to us. But it also, and then that also, the QL1, as it sends that out, it may be sending out other things. It's a mix minus. It's a lot of other things that are making that work. So those are the basic. I mean, that's the basic process of how that pipeline works. And we haven't really talked about it too much here, only because we're still figuring it out. So that's where we are right now. Of course, the goal here is not for us to be the holders of all the information. The goal is to empower our entire group to make these shows. So we'll keep on, as we get better at this, we'll put up some technical docs and talk about exactly how to get it done. We're not trying to hang on to it. So just keep asking, and we'll keep on telling you, because it'll keep changing. Cool. With me, it'll change every week. It's so crisp.
Thanks.
Yep.
I'm worried that there's certain cables at Zoom that if people tripped over them, this thing would come crumbling down really bad.
Certain cables?
Yeah, like oh, don't touch those cables. Those are Alex's patches. I mean, this is such a house of cards of connection points. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's going to get a lot more interesting so the next step when Andy comes out will be to do ZoomISO, which then it's going to grab everybody in the panel and pull them all into no, he won't be able to do the audio, but all the video feeds will come in and then be spun out into our system. And so that's going to be a much different, that way we can have instant access to everyone. Right now, if someone talks in the panel, it gets pinned and then cut to, but there's like a little bit of a delay there. And then the goal then is to also integrate it with what Makana does to be able to automatically build the super sources, so as we go through it. And that'll, again, because we're doing a conversation, and because it's nonlinear, and because it's because we're doing a nonlinear conversation that's moving at the speed at which ours is moving at, we have to build new tools that don't exist in broadcast, because you can't say, oh, I'm going to cue that person, or I'm going to tell them that that's, it's happening like that.
Nope. I have it on gallery view,
go ahead, John.
We can get comms here, and I assume that through the Unity comms, you could talk to me individually, or I could hear the director. Is there any way where we on the panel, because my mic's unmuted, so anything I say goes to the air. So if I had a question, would I have to have a Unity headset here also?
Yeah, if you wanted to talk through the comms, you would need to have a Unity panel open, and some people do that. They have the guests jump and open Unity. We don't do that because we're trying to keep it as simple as possible for the end person. So from your perspective, in my opinion, you should only have to open up Zoom to do that. Now you'll notice all the way. I'm jump to the panel here in a second. You'll notice that we've moved the lower third, which I like, except for now it's under a meter for me. But I think that works. I don't know what other people think. Go ahead, Hosmak.
Yeah, this is interesting. For 2 days, I was on the other side of the fence. Now I'm on this side of the fence. So it's quite interesting. The question was, should there be a sync issue watching you guys?
There may be right now, because we haven't started correcting for sync yet. So there definitely could be a sync issue where we have to figure out. There's a whole lot of audio going on right now. So there definitely could be sync issues with this that we have to. That'll be the next thing for us to work on. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So going back to the telestrator, excuse me, going back to the telestrator, I noticed that you were hitting close to the edge, and from your video, it looks like you're still full screen, because I could see the little signal icon on the bottom. You might want to put some sort of gutter in on your telestrator, so if it does get zoomed in, your telestrations don't get cut off.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Who's next? So by the way, for the funny thing about your mind is that it stops knowing who's who without the names, because I don't store them in RAM anymore. And so we have to have, this is for Kevin, the panel has to have the names on them all the time. Otherwise, I don't know. I have two people up there. Todd's been on enough. I know Todd, so we'll call Todd. My brain
Taylor.
is just not Taylor. Sorry, Taylor. I apologize. I just want to. I need to just say in my own defense that I started managing the shoot in France at 2:30 this morning. so anyway, then I came right into the show. So my brain is not quite at 100%. Go ahead. We'll start with Taylor and then Todd.
Alex, I was just saying I like the position of the lower third. When there was a shot to you where the lower third was, I think that looks nice. I think if that matches for everybody, I think it'll look really well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
I two things. First of all, with regard to sync, I'm kind of amazed that the sync is working as well as it is. With you saying that that there's a loop in the around trip.
Well, we
it's
haven't
kind
tested.
of amazing.
Yeah, we just haven't looked at it yet. I mean, I think that's the next thing we have to do. Let's jump to a question in Makana. We want to test this real quick. Go ahead and let's ask a question. Go ahead, Guy.
All right. Next one's coming in from Roman Kirik in Kiev, Ukraine. And he says, I really appreciate your work, Alex and panel at all. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. Why are you doing that for free?
The thing is that it is, there's so many reasons that I'm doing this. Like it's hard to like pinpoint all the things, the reason that I did it. I mean, I think that I'm really interested in the industry moving, into the future and not being. I felt like one of the primary reasons I turned it on when I first turned on office hours was because when we did Hangouts, we were Google's Hangout crew. Like we did the president and the Pope and the space station, and like anytime there was a hard glass jump, anytime there was a hard Hangout, we were there. And we knew everything. We wrote programs that controlled the Hangouts, and we had all the stuff that managed it. And we probably knew more we knew more about Hangouts than I think most people at Google did. So because we were using it all day, every day, and we were doing 3 to 5 shows a week. We wouldn't tell anybody anything. Like all I was worried about. Anytime anybody here who's owned a company knows that once you get to about 20 or 30 employees, you think a lot about payroll every day. My mom used to joke with a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. She said there's people who are, there's the two kinds of people on payroll and people trying to make payroll. So as a result, we wouldn't tell anybody anything because I couldn't afford for my and that's eventually what happened was I had a shift in the business and now I'm on payroll, which I'm quite happy with. So anyway, so so we wouldn't tell anybody anything, and people would just destroy their Hangouts. Like they'd see what we were doing. They'd try to do something that complicated, and then they'd roll a 737 down the highway. And it was ugly. These big public Hangouts. I mean, a lot of us saw those. We were successful over 99% of the time. Like it was, like we were, but no one else was, and it killed the industry. So it killed the entire ecosystem that I was building into because of other people's failure. That business went away. Now we shifted at that point to Facebook Live, which happened at the same time. So we started doing all Facebook stuff. so we went from Google to Facebook, and that was a pretty seamless transition for us. But the lesson that I learned was that everyone had to do it well, not just me. It had to be everyone has to do it if you want to have the ecosystem work. And so it's much better to have. If this industry is potentially so large, there is no amount of work that would ever compete with my work. I can see a future where we're doing this all the time and they're bigger and better. And what we're trying to do is create that bigger and better that's out there, knowing that's an ocean, like just a giant ocean, but it won't happen if we don't get good at it, and lots of us don't get good at it. And so that was going, the lesson that I learned in Hangouts was to build up the industry and to get people going. The other thing I saw was that if it builds up, I need to
I need to hire people, and I don't know anybody anymore. You know, when Google hit us, I did one job and it worked, and then literally we were doubling in revenue every month for a year. You know, like it was just like this crazy. We had to factor our invoices, if anyone knows what factoring is, because the accounts payable was behind how fast we were growing. You know, or accounts receivable was behind. You basically give your money to a bank, and then they charge a huge amount of money to give you your money early on the invoice instead of when the company pays you, because the only way we could make payroll. And so because we went from 6 people to 30 people in like 2 months. You know, and so anyway, and with no investment, you're just all bootstrapped, and so the only reason I did that was because of Pixel Core. Because Pixel Core, I had trained people, I had people all over the world, and the whole thing was successful because I'd invested all that time and effort into a lot of people over years, and so I was like, okay, so if this is going to get really big, not only do I need to make the industry successful, but I also need to find people. so this is, and I need to, know that I can, hire people. If you look at the projects I'm doing now, probably 80% of the teams are from office hours. It's because I'm getting to know people here, and then where the right person fits into that. What's great about this is that person fits into this puzzle piece, and this person, the right person for the right thing. They show up in Discord, they show up on the panel, they start working on some of these projects. A lot of them are people like volunteer for some project, and I get to see what they look like. And so, from like Mad in the Kitchen or something else, and I get to see them, or we did some Unreal stuff, and, like for instance, Jesse did some great stuff. And so I was like, okay, that guy knows that, like, it's in the back of my head of like, that person knows that thing, so I find just the right person for just the right, those pieces. And so that's the, building up that network. And the goal is that that's a network for me, but it's a network for all of us, that all of us can find each other, and that's going to produce better content. That's going to produce more success. That's going to produce, all of those things are the things that we're trying to build. Now that was the calculation of why I did it. Now I do it because, this is my network. This is my, outside of my family, I've hung out with all of you more than anyone else in the world, and so it's easy to get up and do it and hang out with everybody here. I learn something every single day. So it's not, the calculations, what I just told you was why I started it, why I continue to do it, is just because I just enjoy hanging out with everybody here, and I feel like we've created something that has never been created before. I know that sounds really crazy, but I don't know anything like it. And so I'm just enjoying it. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, 3 quick things. Someone's drilling in the wall behind me, which I didn't know was going to happen. Second thing is I can see no return FY, just so you know that. But the third thing to this question, which is, I think we all believe you should model the behavior you want others to follow. And a part of this to me is us starting to model the behavior we want others to follow.
Sorry, I missed it because someone was talking in my ear while you were doing it. So
it was a great point. Don't worry about it.
I'm sure it was perfect. For Kevin and Nate, there's nothing that you can do. I don't care how it breaks. We're trying to get it to be fixed in the next 20 minutes. So do whatever we have. The reason that we're doing this during office hours is so that we can drum out the problems as fast as possible with a lot of people, because you can't figure this out without a lot of people in it, without all these people watching, and without somebody in here. We're never going to get to the solution. So it's just a matter of fixing it. And while we're doing that, I would really like to turn the meters off in the thing. Like, it's driving me absolutely crazy that I've said I need to turn the meters off and the meters aren't turned off. so we just need to turn them. There we go.
Oops.
There he goes. No,
Oops. That was got to black.
That was cut to black. That's fine.
Fenwick went to black also.
We all went to black. So now but we can hear each other. So we've lost.
You know what it's like for me.
Nice job, Andy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Are you okay with the meters being on? Are you okay
we
with
just lost the returns, so everyone can
here?
still see us. Okay, so it's just our returns that are getting
they're fixing
set up there. So we can't see anything.
Alex, I know you can't see me. This is Fenwick.
Meters are off now. Yep. That's great.
I will notice that through this system that there, and I'm sure you know this, but it does feel a little bit more latent when I say something and waiting for your response. It's not horrible, but I can totally tell the difference than a normal Zoom meeting.
Yep, and
it's the truth. That there's a little bit of latency there because it's not doesn't just feel that way. It is that way because it's a double bounce, you know. And so
I get it.
One way we think we can lower that is to put the Zoom server in our office, which we're going to research as far as putting one of the reflectors in our office, which we think may lower that latency. The other thing is what's interesting is if we were able to get isolated audio out of ZoomISO, we probably wouldn't need to use all those PCs because then we'd have independent. So if we were able to do that, then you'd have the low latency of Zoom, but we'd have the ability. The reason that we're still doing it is because we can't isolate the audio. Like the audio is the thing that keeps us in all these separate computers. That's the part that's tying our feet, you know, nailing our feet to the ground. Is that we can't get isolated audio out. Go ahead, Jeffrey. Did you have something, or did we pass it?
Oh, just first of all, I wanted to let you know that I was hearing some keyboard typing in there about 10, 15 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
Not on your side, not on our side. So that's it.
Oh, maybe we had our own mic open. That's interesting. The other thing is that I think that one of the problems that we have with this 6-up, now I'm looking at it, is that we did start, like, for instance, we can't do the question lower third. I don't know if Nate needed to do that or not, but we can't do the lower third underneath this 6. So it may be something that we do want to pull it up, pull the 6 up. Yeah, but I mean, I think that being able to have a messaging underneath it, I think is valuable. So I think that being able to pull this up and having some branding down the side and then having some space at the bottom might make sense. Go ahead, Chris Fenwick.
My first inclination for composing the 6-up would be 6 closer to 16 by 9s, leaving the bottom. You can brand it. You can put the questions there. And I'll also say, and I know this is only for the panel, but it's interesting that the style of the lower third matches the style of the label coming out of the constellation, and I don't know which one I'm supposed to be looking at. It's the same. It's rounded corners. It's a semi-translucent thing. Whoever designed it needs to stop looking at the constellation screen.
No, it's actually based on the Office Hours logo.
I know.
So yeah.
But so when you designed the Office Hours logo, you were staring at a constellation screen.
Maybe
it's too close.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Alex, can you clarify for a second? I'm looking at the chat. I know you mentioned it yesterday of the direction Office Hours is going in and why you are doing these new panels and so forth. I know you already mentioned that not necessarily everyone is going to be able to be on the panels every day. So I think there's some confusion about direction you're going in and whether it's going to be paid, it's going to be paid or whatever the case may be. So I think there's some confusion about direction.
Yeah, sure. So there's not going to be any. I mean, what we're doing right now is always going to be free. The main thing is when we do things that require resources, at some point we're going to give people. We're in the process of turning it into a 501c Office Hours into a 501c3, so that we keep all the money that you give us and put it into hardware and things like that. Other than paying some support staff, I'm not getting paid out of that. It would be just for hardware and us building stuff up. I have a job, so So we're going to, go out and probably have some projects that people can contribute to if they want to. I have big dreams of, if you look at what we did with Man in the Kitchen and imagine doing that for a full-on production, like a weekend production where you get to watch guys that used to work on Star Wars building an effect shot. Because I in my building, there's a stage and a model shop. And so the idea is, what if you could do behind the scenes? But to do that, we need to pool our money together to do it. So we'd probably say, hey, if you want to watch that, it might cost, you could maybe watch different sections of it. Like the whole thing might be, with all the plates that we shot and everything else, might be $500. Watching on Saturday might be $50. Watching on some hour might be $10 or whatever, so that we can pay for it. But it'll always be around, like, what can we create, with that process. Turning the show into it is, this is R&D. This is us just figuring out how to build a great show. Because if we look at what we're doing here, we're on the verge of creating an entirely new kind of content. Like it's, this discussion content that isn't for, pundits sitting around a table, that is smarter, I think, and more interactive with the audience and everything else. And so what we're trying to do here is turn it up. When people look at the current
before this, I mean, we're still working on it, but as people look at it, they, there's a lot of people that are going, oh, it's cute. Like they don't get it as a show. They don't get that it, because of the quality and everything else that Zoom streams out and that big Zoom logo and everything else. It's just harder for me to sell it, to larger, if I want to have someone more important come in as a guest, if I want to, my goal is that eventually every single second hour is just something that you just have to be at. Like it's just going to be this incredible, we've got, and we do pretty well now. We can get, we're going to have a great conversation with Mark, from Isadora tomorrow, and we're going to have, great second hours, coming up. But it kind of was hot and cold. So part of it is getting a team that can manage it, and then the second thing is making sure that the quality is so high that people see it and they go immediately like, oh, I got to be part of, I got to be on this, and then getting people to. In some cases, we've already had people coming to us going, we really want to be on office hours. And so we want to keep that pressure. We want to continue to increase that pressure so that we get better and bigger and, everything else. We want to get to a point where we can invite anybody, in our industry to come, or maybe eventually anybody to come talk to us. And so, so that's, I think that is that's the goal. And the way to do that is to keep on turning the dial up. And so I also feel like our stream to YouTube didn't really acknowledge the incredible work that the panelists have done on what they look like and sound like and everything else. So it's kind of like we're doing this, everyone's doing, they have great cameras and great audio, and then it's getting squeezed down into this nasty little pipe. And so I want to make sure that folks watching can get the full quality of that. And so even in the first hour has already gotten better just by switching over to streaming a screen scrape over what we were doing before. So that's already a step forward. And then the second hour, a lot of times, again, when we're doing a roundtable discussion about trying to figure something out for a second hour, because some of them it'll just be more of this. It'll just be the first hour we'll just stream over. It won't always switch to this. But when we have a guest, if you actually go back and look at most of those, it's not a roundtable discussion. It's now questions for that guest, that we're managing. It's a different structure of a conversation. In fact, one of the behaviors I try to push back actually is having panelists raise their hand, because I want their questions to be on the same level as the producers that are watching, rather than them, sidestepping that infrastructure. That gets back into that hybrid versus online and everything else. It's almost a hybrid event where you're now cutting in line, as a panelist. And so I want it to go out. I want people to vote on it and then go through. It's the way we kind of have it structured. And so for that second hour when we have a guest, this is what this is designed for, or a roundtable. For WWDC, we're going to have there's 6 or 7 people that are there, plus someone doing Q&A. And we'll have some developers and Renee and I and possibly some other folks. And so for that, again, it's going to be, there'll be a part where it's us just hanging out talking. Then it's going to be that show, and then it's going to come back out and we'll all talk a little bit more, because that's what we do. So anyway, but that's kind of going to be kind of the process of how we do that. Hopefully does that answer your question, George? I think it's an important question. I know people keep on.
It does. I was just looking at the chat and there was some comments. Let me just say, for one who has been in this industry for a long time, I have to tell you that the year-long workshop, I'm calling it a workshop, has been great, because I've gone to many NABs and many conferences and paid money to attend to things, and this has been free for a year. And it's, for those of us that
be free.
Have a harness.
This isn't going anywhere. I don't need to make money on this. Like this thing that we're doing here. I want people to invest. I like the fact that the panelists have invested in their setup. Like that's added a lot of value to our show. And that's an investment that they've all made, or many of them made. I don't see any reason. I got into this to my mission statement is a global conversation where no one's left out. Like that's what it is going to be for this as well. It was for DB Garage, for Pixel Course, the same one, my own. So I've been working on this for 20 years. My goal is that this is available to everyone, and that people can, we may need to charge for things so that we can keep on growing, but it isn't going to be these shows. My goal is that we get to a point where we're running this 24/7. possibly even multiple channels. I mean, I look at it as eventually we run them 24/7. Then there's an audio one and a video one and an AWS one, and they're all running 24/7. Like they're all just turning so that there's just an enormous amount of content that we're kind of working on, for that process. So, yeah, go ahead, Karl.
So I just wanted to go back a little bit to the 6-up, as we said, where we've got the squares. I've actually done a little bit of this in edited material, so stuff in post.
Yep.
And I've found that if you use 2x3, you've got your lower third. I needed a lower third. It was a bounce along, sing along thing. So I needed a bounce along karaoke thing at the bottom. And I found that 2x3 turned out to be the best ratio for the videos.
That's great.
So
yeah, we'll take a look at that. I think that we also have to figure out how we're going to do 7 and 8. We'd figure that out too. So we're working on that. But I do think, yeah, you can throw those in if you want, Nate. There's me talking to him. We talked about this yesterday. I'm not super excited about being separated from the panel, but I'd rather be part of the panel as opposed to separated. But it works as far as a 7-up if we have those folks. Yep. And then what are the other? You have any other looks for us, Nate? Oop, and my return went black again. So
I still have no return.
Oh, interesting. So mine's not. So you have a return now. So anyway, let's jump to the next question while we're waiting.
I have no return.
Oh, okay.
Next one's coming in from Patrick Shonas in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he says, since Nate is remote, what is his connection and interface method to the ATEM constellation? How much latency does he have to live with?
I think his latency is really related to Nate's latency to the constellation is really related to the Zoom return of a couple hundred milliseconds. But I've controlled the ATEM down in the office as well from my house, and it feels instant. Like it doesn't feel like it's, it just goes. So it's pretty good. And what Nate's doing, mine is on we sit on a Meraki network. I have a Meraki appliance that is providing my office with a connection to the office, but Nate is VPNing in through his laptop. Then he's sharing that VPN connection through Ethernet out to a switch, and then anything he needs to be connected to the office goes through that switch. And so that doesn't require any hardware or any cost. It's just a matter of making it, putting it together. And we have to provision it within our office. I can't see anybody, so I'm just going to go to the next question. We're running out of time anyway.
Next question's coming in from Matt Cool in Montreal, Quebec, and he says, how are the lower thirds handled? Are they automatically tied to each speaker? And I think we got the lower third down.
Yeah, so there's a view out of Mukana that we just haven't used for this. We've had it for years, but we just haven't used it for office hours until now. That just it's a web view actually of the output of Mukana, and you can design how that looks, background color and outlines and text and everything else. And it's just tied in. So when Guy hits answer, he can also hit lower third, and it'll just send it to that page. And there's also tickers and other things that we've used in the past that we just didn't need until now. So we'll use more of it probably as we go. I have Signal back. Let's see anybody raising their hand. So next question.
Next one's coming in again from Roman in the Ukraine, and he asks, are you using 6 computers to combine 6 speakers on one template?
We're using more than 6 because we have to do the return back to office hours. We have to... there's a couple. So I think that we end up using at least two more than what we have. But right now we have I think 10, and then there's other computers that have to send this multi-view back to Nate as well. So there's a couple other pieces to the puzzle. Go ahead, Chris.
I think a very interesting, and this applies to everything that we do, and it kind of goes to Alex's mission statement. But when you look at this project of how Alex is trying to build this thing, there's a lot of people that want to say, well, you should just do this or do this or do that. But you always have to go back to the core goal. And when we are building anything, we always want to, put that Post-it at the top of the screen or the biggest thing on the chalkboard. And the core goal is that he wants to have total control of the signal, the resolution, and the audio. Mm-hmm. And when you keep reminding yourself of that, when you because you're going to say, well, why don't we just do it like this? Do you have total control of the signal, the resolution, and the audio?
Well,
if you don't,
and
then
the question
that doesn't.
Yeah, a lot of times to Chris's point is that you got to throw the ball where the receiver is going. I'm throwing a long bomb, so I'm throwing it to a place that the receiver is not even close right now, and so I'm not throwing it to where they are right now. The long bomb that I'm throwing at right now, or not even the long bomb, the halfway, is that I want 4K HDR with immersive audio. You know, those are the things that I want to do, and I want us to be there by September. Like this show that we're doing here is in that resolution, so it's highly interactive. It's engaging the audience. It's panelists from all over the world, and it's at a resolution and a color depth and an audio processing that broadcast can't do. You know, and I think I can do all of those things. I think we can do all of those things together. And the point is to prove the point is that I'm tired of. I think web has to stop being the little thing. I mean, it's been growing up, but you know, I'm putting on brass knuckles and start pounding down on this. You know that you know we want to have when people put this on in September on their 4K. You know, Apple with their Apple HDR or whatever, we want to knock their socks off. I mean, that's the goal. You know, go ahead, Karl.
Can you give me like a use case for immersive audio for essentially us talking and immersive audio like during a presentation where someone may actually be presenting something with audio?
Well, what if we were doing training in Atmos and Vision? It would be really great if you could watch it in Atmos. Like if I say, listen to this, we can have this audio go behind you, or we can have this come in front of you, or let's look at the different, like the biggest problem you have right now when you want to talk about Vision is everyone's watching it in SDR. So you go, okay, so here's the Vision one and here's the SDR one, and you have to kind of just make the SDR one lower because you can't compare it. So what if we were able to be in the environment, whether it's HDR10 or Vision or whatever, or an Atmos? If I was able to train you and have a bird floating around in your house, if you have the tools, that'd be great. Also, if I want to show you a clip from a movie, or I want you to listen to, or we're listening to a band, imagine. We're going to get Brian Vander Ark back and get stems from him using Unity Connect back into our office. And then when he plays, we're just having a conversation with with Brian Vander Ark. But when he plays, if you have Atmos, you can hear it, you know, inside of our show, you know, and again, part of that is, so there's, but if I want to talk, like we want to bring a director in, let's say the director for Tenet, or I'm not going to get that, but you know, the idea is that we bring Christopher Nolan in, let's say, and he comes in and he's talking to us, but when we play the clips, they're in, you know, when, you know, the Atmos and it's in Vision and those things, because that's not going through Zoom. Like those playouts aren't going through, you know, anything. So we're able to play that out. And so our conversation doesn't need to have that resolution. Now, in the basic thing, if you use Blue Jeans, you'll notice that, you know, there's Dolby in there and it'll spread people out. If you have a laptop that'll do it, it'll spread everybody out a little bit. It's actually kind of cool. And so we'll probably find ways that we put the panelists in center, left front, right front, a little bit in there. But that would be, and you know, I've thought about, like, eventually, I know that this will drive some people crazy, but when we do the sweepers, I kind of want the sweepers to be in Atmos, you know, like, and have different ones. So you hear it go behind you, or it goes, you know, like, you know, and stuff like that. You might even hear it coming from behind you and then swing across, you know, that type of thing. So we'll have some fun with that. And again, when we're doing it every day, and when we have 20 or 30 of you working on it, we're all learning how to do this. This isn't something that is a special event. The way you get good at this is every single day. And so we'll train, you know, like the goal is that we have an army that can do this, not a person. You know, it's not a person being able to do it. It's all of us. And then we all start doing it on our own shows, you know, and we do whatever we need to do. Yeah. And I have a hard out in 4 minutes. So anyway, let's go to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Roman in the Ukraine. He asks, what is your best investment in your professional life? It should be great to have different points of view.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, mentoring. Being mentored and mentoring others is the best investment of time I've ever had.
This is the best investment I've made. It's probably one of the biggest investments I've made, but this is the best investment so far for me. Both in just enjoyment, but also in, you know, I learn an enormous amount. We've got a great community, and the jobs that I'm doing right now would be impossible without the folks that I've met here. So, and I'm bidding on stuff that I couldn't do without this group. So it's I would say this. Anyone else? We'll jump to the next question.
Next one's coming in from Andrew Moyer in Oakville, Ontario, and he says, does the lower third resize for longer names? Everyone that they show up for right now has a similar length name.
The lower thirds that we build are designed. The lower third from the questions definitely is dynamic. So it'll just keep on expanding or contracting based on the number, the text that's there. Yeah. Next question. We won't get to all of them because, again, I have to leave.
TJ Asher asks, where should folks offer their opinions on changes/suggestions for the new look? And he has a note here that says, we are nothing if not an opinionated lot.
I think we were talking about getting Chad to put up something that's like the Office Hours 2.0. If they can, if Chad can put that in, maybe put it in the second or the RFI to request Chad do that. But if Chad's hearing me, then we should just put one in there and then we can talk about it. Yep. Next question.
Taylor Senderhouse in Cincinnati, Ohio. Alex, could you promote what staff is needed in the background? What positions do you need to fill?
And we have Kevin is doing connections. I'm not sure. Andy is doing audio right now. Nate's cutting the show. Eventually, we need someone to manage graphics. We need someone to manage do the great thing that Karl's doing. We will need people. We'll keep on growing that out. Where we can be responsive. People managing the questions. People talking about that. Building a whole comm network that ties everybody together. I think that. Again, without not including the panel, I think we'll get to a point where there's 15 to 20 people that are, there'll be people prepping the show, so it's not just technical people, it's people prepping the show, reaching out to the host or the guests, figuring out who's going to be on Thursday a month from now, working out the emails. So it's not me. And if I forget, it doesn't come out with last week's. So there's a lot of those. And I know that a lot of you have already both texted me, emailed me, Discorded me, and filled out the form. And when we get through next week is when we're going to start picking up speed on that. Just so you know, I'm just really I can't add more to what I'm doing at the moment. Next question.
Dave Node in Charleston, North Carolina says, how do you handle a remote speaker dropping out in a multi-up? I have written easy kill pip presets in the Barco E2 to reveal a still image of the presenter so we don't end up with an empty box.
We usually have it so it goes, we have had it so it just goes back to gray when they drop out. It used to be the return, and we figured out how to get around that. But that's what we have right now. We hope that it doesn't happen very often. It's only happened a couple times for us. But yeah, and we cut away. Next question.
Next one is coming in from Stuart Fairweather in Melbourne, Australia. And he says, quality control, can we do a second hour on campaigns to get governments to lift to office hours quality? And he has a note here that says, trust me, ours down under are hopeless, and it's a closed shop to outsiders with skills. Head, meet, wall, meet, wall, meet, wall.
I think the best thing is to keep on making ourselves an example. And that's, again, why we keep turning the notches up on the show. Like when we can tell people that we're doing this over Zoom in 2 months, they won't believe it. Like already, if you go back and look at I've been kind of watching these. There's some black level issues that we're still working on, but this looks pretty close to a show on YouTube right now. When we got out of Zoom's streaming and we started doing this earlier this week, it's looking like a show. And with a little bit more work, it definitely looks as good as YouTube TV because it's compressed too. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers asks, what is the plan for tomorrow since the Isadora panel will be the first real production show?
It's probably just going to be right now. I think it's going to be just Mark and I in the second one, with some with a guy asking questions, and be that first experiment with that kind of interview process. That's where we're going with that. Next question.
Next one is just a test from Mickey for a long name.
It works.
Lower third, so that's what it looks like.
There you go. Last question.
Last one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, even with the technical advantages of Blue Jeans, better audio/video quality, why do you think Zoom dominated the market so quickly when COVID hit?
Because it's ease of use, easy to sign up. So it was free for people to do up to 40 minutes without any real work. You could just turn it on and go. It was the grid view. Like, it was kind of amazing that no one got how important that was, and I didn't even get it until you see it. There's other little things, like when you're in Here's the one that I've just noticed recently because I use a lot of blue jeans for we'll cut out of this because we're out of time. When you're in speaker view, Zoom puts the film strip at the top. Everybody else puts the film strip at the bottom, which means when you're talking to other people, you're looking down like this all the time. It makes a difference. You know, that little film strip, I just notice how much in blue jeans I'm looking down, you know, way away from the camera. The fact that the film strip's at the top is genius, you know, and so, you know, those kinds of things and, you know, ease of use, really good little bits and pieces that just make it work. The grid view, which again, anyway, so those are some, and then a lot of the tools, like a lot of these are dumbed down. Google had a bunch of stuff, but they don't have any tools. Like they didn't have any way to control it. Like it's like I can flip 3 things, and you go open up Zoom, and you could tell that Zoom's been doing this for a long time. It's scary and meandering, and there's like you have to know where to find the catacombs of the preferences, but at least they're there. You know, like nobody else has that, you know, and so control, some good design elements and ease of use, I think is why Zoom took away. And right now I still think that no one's even close. I mean, I'm using all of these every day and I don't think it's even close. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely echo. It's super easy. And if anybody ever had problems, I would always just tell them, just ask your 10-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Nigel. Last thing real quick.
I have to jump in about 2. Okay. So I don't know if we have
all right, we're all going. All right. See everybody. We'll see you in the post show.